He took refuge in a cave to avoid being marked, until the Alpha Angel came. Every step he took seemed to echo louder than the last, though he knew no one could follow him. Still, fear clung to him like a second skin. He had no home, no safety, no one to trust. The mark on his shoulder burned like a brand of destiny he had never asked for. Those who saw it, the humans, the angels, even the creatures of the wild, treated him with a mixture of awe and fear. Some called it a curse. Others whispered that it was a calling. Kale called it death. He stumbled over a root and fell to his knees, wiping the dirt from his hands and trying to catch his breath. He knew he couldn't stop. He had learned that long ago. To stop was to be hunted. To stop was to be taken. Ahead, the dark outline of a cave appeared, hidden behind tangled vines and jagged rocks. Relief and dread twisted in his chest. The cave promised shelter, but caves had their own dangers. Still, it was better than the open forest, better than being exposed under the stars where his mark could be seen, noticed, feared. Kale crawled inside, his body aching, muscles screaming, but his mind sharper than ever. He pressed his back to the cold stone and let himself breathe slowly, trying to calm the storm inside. The cave was quiet, almost sacred in its emptiness. The damp smell of earth filled his nose, and for the first time that night he felt invisible. Or at least he hoped he did. As his eyes adjusted to the dimness, Kale could see faint shapes carved into the walls, ancient drawings, or perhaps scratches from some long-gone creature. He traced them with a trembling hand, curious despite himself. These marks reminded him that even in solitude, he was not the first to hide, not the first to seek refuge. Perhaps even fate was repeating itself. He settled deeper into the cave, arranging a small pile of dry leaves for comfort. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees like 1,000 unseen voices, warning him, calling him, testing him. Kale closed his eyes, trying to let it all fade. He wished he could forget the world outside, forget the danger that hunted him, forget the mark that burned beneath his skin. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time felt distorted in the dark. Then, faintly, a light appeared. At first, Kale thought it a trick of his tired eyes. The cave walls reflected the moonlight in strange ways, creating illusions in his mind. But the light grew, pure and piercing, glowing like silver fire. Kale's heart froze. He knew what was coming before he even saw it. The Alpha Angel. He had heard stories, whispered in fear by those few humans who survived encounters. Angels of lesser rank sometimes passed through villages unnoticed, but the Alpha, powerful, commanding, unyielding, was a force that no mortal could resist. And Kale, with his mark, was exactly the kind of mortal who would draw attention. The light coalesced into a figure, tall and radiant, standing at the entrance of the cave. Kale could see the strength in the angel's posture, the grace of wings that seemed to fold and shimmer even in stillness. The figure's eyes glowed faintly, an otherworldly light that seemed to see right through Kale, through his fear, through his desperation. "You cannot hide," the voice said, smooth and powerful, echoing against the stone. "No shadow is deep enough to protect you from what is meant." Kale swallowed hard. His instincts screamed to run, to vanish deeper into the cave, but his legs refused to move. There was something in the angel's presence that held him, not with chains but with gravity, inescapable, undeniable. I don't want trouble," Kale whispered, trying to sound braver than he felt. "I don't want to be marked. I just want to disappear." The angel stepped closer, the light bending around him like liquid silver. His gaze softened just enough to make Kale's heart ache. "The mark chose you long before you chose yourself," he said. "Running only delays what must come. You cannot escape the power within you." Kale's chest tightened. "Then I will fight it, I will hide. I'll go anywhere, do anything, just don't." His voice broke. Fear, exhaustion, and loneliness pooled inside him like molten lead. "Don't make me a part of something I can't control." For a moment the cave was silent, except for the distant howl of the wind outside. The angel tilted his head, watching Kale with an expression that was neither anger nor judgment, but something older, deeper, and almost painful. "Control is an illusion," he said softly. "Even I cannot command what you are, but I can guide you if you let me." Kale's mind raced. Guide him from whom? From the world that hunted him, or from himself? He didn't trust anyone. Not angels, not humans, not even the strange creatures that sometimes wandered the borderlands of the forest. And yet, a small part of him, a part that had not been crushed by fear, longed for something more than solitude. The angel extended a hand, not in threat but in invitation. "You are not alone, Kale, not if you choose to step forward." Kale's breath hitched. His fingers twitched as if drawn to that hand by some invisible force. He wanted to resist, to retreat into the safety of shadows. And yet he couldn't, not completely. Something about this being, the alpha angel, the hunter, the stranger, awakened a part of him that had lain dormant for years. Curiosity, hope, the faintest spark of trust. Kale started, then stopped. Words failed him. He had spent his life fleeing, hiding, silencing his own voice. Now, faced with a creature of light and power, he realized how empty that life had been. And still, the fear gripped him tighter than ever. The angel's gaze held his, steady and unwavering. "I will not harm you, Kale, but the world outside the cave will not wait. You must decide, stay in darkness or step into the light." The cave felt suddenly smaller, the shadows pressing closer. Kale's heart thudded in his chest like a warning drum. The light of the angel seemed to pull at him, and for the first time in years he felt the weight of a choice, terrifying, overwhelming, but also liberating. Kale's hand hovered near the angel's outstretched one, trembling. His mind screamed at him to flee, to vanish into the earth itself. But his body refused. There was a strange calm beneath the fear, a quiet insistence that perhaps this meeting was not punishment, but an opportunity. The wind outside intensified, rattling the entrance of the cave. The shadows danced on the walls, reflecting Kale's uncertainty. And yet in the middle of the chaos, the angel waited, patient and unwavering, a lighthouse in the storm of his life. Kale swallowed, his throat dry. I can't stay here forever," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper, "but I don't know if I can trust you either." The angel's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "Trust is not given, it is earned. And you will have every chance to earn it, if you survive what comes next." Kale's stomach turned, not from fear of the angel, but from the knowledge that this was true. Survival would demand courage, sacrifice, and perhaps even a confrontation with the part of himself he had long denied, the part that the mark had always belonged to. For a long moment the cave was silent again, the only sounds the wind and Kale's ragged breathing. Then, without warning, the angel stepped closer, the light of his presence filling the cave until it seemed to pulse with life. Kale felt warmth, power, and something else. An unspoken promise, dangerous and irresistible, that whatever path lay ahead, it would change him forever. Kale swallowed hard and took a trembling step forward. And then, lightning split the sky outside, illuminating the cave in blinding silver light. Kale's heart leapt to his throat as the storm raged, the wind howling through the forest, rattling the stone walls. He turned to the angel, eyes wide. What do we do now?" The angel's voice was calm, steady, unyielding. "Now," he said, "we wait, and we prepare. The world outside will not forgive hiding, and neither will the power that runs through your veins." Kale nodded, though fear still gripped him. He pressed himself against the cold stone, trying to absorb courage like warmth from fire. The cave had become both prison and sanctuary. The night had become both threat and revelation. And above all, Kale knew that from this moment forward nothing would ever be the same. The alpha angel watched him silently, wings partially unfurled, light dancing across his form. Kale knew, deep in his bones, that this encounter was only the beginning. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, Kale's heart beat faster than ever before. and he realized with a mixture of terror and awe that he was no longer running. Not yet. Not from everything that mattered. The storm outside the cave had not ceased, though inside, Kale felt only the quiet hum of tension. The alpha angel, Seraphiel, stood near the entrance, his wings folding and unfolding like silver sails in the dim light. Kale's chest tightened with every movement, not just from fear, but from a strange, unexplainable pull he could not resist. "You can try to hide," Seraphiel said, voice calm but firm. "But hiding will not save you. Not from me. Not from them. Not from yourself." Kale's hand twitched at his side. "Why are you here? Are you hunting me?" His voice wavered, betraying the uncertainty he had tried to mask. "I am not here to hunt," Seraphiel replied, taking a slow step forward. "I am here to guide, to protect, if you will let me." Kale laughed bitterly, a sound that echoed hollowly against the cave walls. "Protect me? From what? From life? From death? From the mark I never wanted?" Seraphiel's expression did not waver. "From everything you have not yet learned to face." Kale swallowed. He wanted to argue, to run, to vanish into the shadows where no one could touch him. But something in the angel's gaze made his words falter. There was authority there, yes, but also patience, an unexpected gentleness that contradicted everything he had been told about angels. "You are stronger than you believe," Seraphiel said, lowering his voice so that it carried almost like a whisper in the cave. "The mark is not a curse, Kale. It is a power, one that could change the world, but it is also dangerous. Untamed, it could destroy everything, including you." Kale's fingers curled into fists. "Power," he muttered. "I don't want power, I just want to live, and to be left alone." Seraphiel stepped closer, light radiating from him like dawn spilling over the horizon. "To live, Kale, you must first face what lives inside you." The words unsettled Kale in ways he could not name. They were not threats, yet they weighed heavily on his mind, echoing truths he had avoided for years. He had spent his life running from fear, from destiny, from the mark that branded him as different, dangerous, visible. And now, here stood a being more powerful than anything he had ever known, demanding that he stop running. I don't know if I can," Kale admitted, voice breaking slightly. "You can," Seraphiel said, voice firm but kind. "I will not lie, this path will be hard. You will be tested. You will be afraid, but you are not alone if you choose to stand with me." Kale wanted to reject the offer, to run, to prove that he could survive on his own. And yet the cave felt smaller, the shadows pressing closer, and the presence of the alpha angel was like a magnet he could not resist. I don't even know your name," Kale whispered. "Seraphiel," the angel replied. "I am the alpha, and you, Kale, are exceptional, but only if you choose to be." Kale's stomach tightened at the word exceptional, though he could not explain why. He had spent years feeling invisible, worthless, unwanted. And yet here was someone telling him that he mattered, telling him that the mark, the thing he had hated for so long, might be a gift. The cave grew silent except for the sound of the storm outside. Kale shivered, part from cold, part from something he did not want to name. I don't know if I can trust you," he said finally. "Trust is earned," Seraphiel said, "not demanded, and you will have every chance to earn it if you survive what comes next." Kale's heart thudded. Survive what? The alpha angel's eyes softened, though the power in them remained unbroken. "The forces that seek you, the darkness in the world, and the fear within yourself." Kale felt a shiver run through him, and for a moment he imagined the night outside consuming him, shadows stretching long and hungry. But Seraphiel remained, a calm presence in the chaos, a steady light in a storm of fear. "You said you are here to guide me," Kale said, "but what does that mean? What do you want from me?" Seraphiel took a step closer, lowering his voice to almost a whisper. "I want you to survive, Kale, to face what comes, to understand the strength you hold and to wield it wisely. The world is changing, and the mark you carry is part of that change. But if you refuse to embrace it, it could consume you." Kale pressed his back to the cave wall, trying to hold on to control, trying to convince himself he could still run. But deep down, he knew that running was over. He had reached the edge of a path he could not escape. A sudden gust of wind rattled the cave entrance. The storm outside grew violent, and lightning split the sky, illuminating Seraphiel's form in a silver blaze. Kale flinched, but the angel did not move. He simply stood, steady and unyielding, as if the storm itself obeyed him. "You will have a choice soon," Seraphiel said, "to hide or to step forward, and that choice will shape more than just your life, it will shape the world." Kale's mind raced. He had never been asked to make a choice like this. His life had been dictated by fear, by avoidance, by the need to vanish. Now, for the first time, he was being asked to step into something he could not understand, something larger than himself. He wanted to resist. He wanted to vanish. But there was a strange pull he could not deny. Seraphiel's presence, his calm authority, his unwavering gaze, it stirred something in Kale that he could not name, something that felt like hope or courage or even trust. Kale swallowed, trying to steady his voice. "And if I refuse?" Seraphiel's expression darkened slightly, though his voice remained calm. "Then the world will decide for you, and the power inside you may not wait for mercy." Kale felt the weight of the words, the gravity of the situation. He had spent so long avoiding destiny, believing it could be escaped. Now he realized that destiny had been waiting, patient and relentless, until he could no longer ignore it. The storm outside intensified, the sound of rain and wind hammering against the cave entrance. Kale's heart pounded in his chest as he stared at Seraphiel, weighing his options. And yet beneath the fear, beneath the uncertainty, there was a spark, an ember of something that could grow into courage. I don't know if I'm ready," Kale admitted. "You never will be," Seraphiel said softly, "until you step forward, but you will have guidance. I will not abandon you. I will not leave your side." Kale's chest tightened, and for the first time he considered the possibility of not running. Not just running from danger, but running from himself. Could he face what lay ahead? Could he embrace the mark, the power, the destiny that had always been his burden? The Alpha Angel took a step closer, and Kale felt the warmth of his presence, the gentle strength of his authority. "I will not lie," Seraphiel said, voice low and steady. "This path will not be easy. There will be fear. There will be pain, but if you survive, you will be stronger than you ever imagined." Kale's breath hitched. "Stronger than I imagined." "Yes," Seraphiel said. "Stronger than the fear, stronger than the darkness. Stronger than the world itself, but only if you walk this path with me." Kale pressed his back to the cold stone, feeling the weight of the storm outside and the weight of the decision before him. He wanted to run, to vanish into the shadows, to hide from the mark, from Seraphiel, from everything he could not control. And yet he could not. Not entirely. A part of him, the part that had been buried under years of fear and solitude, wanted to step forward, wanted to trust, wanted to see what could be if he had the courage. The cave fell silent, save for the storm outside. Kale's mind raced, but his body remained still, as if frozen between fear and hope. He looked at Seraphiel, saw the unwavering patience, the quiet strength, and something inside him shifted. I will try," Kale whispered. Seraphiel's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "That is all I ask. One step at a time, Kale. One step at a time." Lightning split the sky, illuminating the cave in blinding silver light. The storm raged, the wind howled, but inside, Kale felt the smallest spark of courage. The path ahead was uncertain, dangerous, and filled with trials he could not yet see. And yet, for the first time in his life, Kale did not turn to run. Not entirely. The Alpha Angel watched him silently, wings partially unfurled, light casting long shadows across the cave. Kale knew, deep in his bones, that this was only the beginning. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, Kale's heart beat faster than ever before, and he realized, with a mixture of fear and awe, that he was no longer entirely alone. The wind howled again, louder this time, carrying a whisper that seemed almost like a warning. The world outside waits, and it will not forgive hesitation. Cale swallowed, gripping his knees. He looked at Seraphiel, and for the first time he felt the strange possibility of trust. And then from the darkness beyond the cave entrance, a shadow moved. Faster than any mortal, silent as the wind. Cale's heart leapt to his throat. Cale, Seraphiel's voice was calm, but the tension in it made Cale freeze. It begins. The cave trembled as a low, resonant growl echoed through the stone walls. Cale's eyes widened. The storm outside was not the only danger. Something ancient, something relentless had found them, and Cale knew this was no longer just about hiding. This was about surviving. And he was not sure if he could. The forest had fallen silent after the storm, leaving only the distant echoes of birds and the rustle of leaves in the wind. Cale followed Seraphiel cautiously, his legs still weak from days of running and nights spent in hiding. The mark on his shoulder throbbed faintly, reminding him that he could not escape what he carried. The Alpha Angel moved with effortless grace, wings folding behind him as he walked. Light radiated from his presence, but it was tempered with something softer now, an almost human patience that unnerved Cale more than the storm or the dangers of the forest ever had. "You must be careful," Seraphiel said, his voice low, almost a whisper carried only for Cale. "The path to the city is not safe. There are forces that hunt those like you, marked by destiny, feared by mortals, coveted by angels. You will face them soon." Cale's hands trembled slightly. "Why me? Why the mark? Why now?" Seraphiel's gaze softened, but his eyes remained sharp, piercing. "Because you are stronger than you know, and the world needs you whether you understand it or not. Your mark is not a curse, Cale. It is a key." Cale swallowed, fear and awe tangled together. He had spent his life running from shadows, avoiding destiny, trying to hide the mark that had always branded him different. And now, faced with the Alpha Angel, he realized he was standing at the edge of a world he could not ignore. The path narrowed as they approached a cliffside, the wind whipping fiercely against them. Seraphiel's presence was a shield against the cold and the fear that rose like a tide in Cale's chest. The Alpha Angel's calmness forced Cale to take in deep, steadying breaths, though every instinct screamed to turn and run. "You cannot run forever," Seraphiel said, almost gently. "Even the forest cannot hide you from what you are meant to become." Cale's throat tightened. "And if I fail?" "You will not fail," Seraphiel replied firmly. "Not if you face yourself honestly. Fear is natural, but it must not control you. You must trust, even if it is only a small part of you." Cale struggled to understand. Trust. He had long buried that word beneath years of solitude and survival. He had learned to rely on no one. Yet here stood Seraphiel, offering patience, protection, and guidance. The angel's presence stirred something in Cale he had never felt, something dangerous and thrilling, like a spark against dry kindling. Their path led them to the edge of the cliff, where a bridge of stone spanned a chasm shrouded in mist. Below, the wind howled, carrying a low, almost mournful hum that made Cale shiver. He glanced at the bridge, then back at Seraphiel. "This bridge is ancient," Seraphiel explained. "It connects the forest to the city of angels. Few mortals have crossed it. Fewer return unscathed." Cale's heart pounded. "And I'm supposed to cross it?" "You have no choice," Seraphiel said, folding his wings tightly. "The city is where your mark will be tested, where your courage and power will be measured, and where you may finally begin to understand who you are." Cale took a deep breath and stepped onto the bridge. The stone beneath his feet was slick with moisture, and the wind threatened to throw him off balance. Every step was a struggle, but Seraphiel stayed close, his hand occasionally brushing Cale's back as reassurance. Cale felt a flush rise to his cheeks, both from exertion and the subtle, unspoken connection between them. As they reached the far side, the city emerged from the mist like a vision. Towers of silver and white stretched toward the sky, wings and light entwined in architecture that seemed impossible to craft. The streets were empty, yet Kale felt the city watching him, judging him, waiting for him to prove himself. "This is incredible," Kale whispered, his eyes wide. "It feels alive." Seraphiel nodded. "It is, but it is also unforgiving. The city of angels does not welcome those who are weak or uncertain. You must prove your strength, Kale. And you must confront the darkness that dwells within you." Kale's stomach tightened. Darkness within him. He had always thought of fear, anger, and loneliness as shadows to avoid. But now he realized that facing them was unavoidable. The city would force him to look inward, to confront every part of himself he had tried to bury. They walked through the gates, and Kale immediately felt the weight of expectation pressing down. Angels moved silently through the streets, their eyes following him. Whispers lingered in the air, almost like wind, carrying curiosity and judgment. Kale clenched his fists, trying to keep his fear under control. Seraphiel placed a hand on his shoulder. "Do not let their judgment define you. Your power comes from within." "Fear is a tool, not a master." Kale nodded, though the words felt hollow. He wanted to believe them, but every instinct told him the city would test him in ways he could not yet imagine. As they reached the central plaza, a figure emerged from the shadows, a smaller angel, wings folded tightly, eyes glowing with an intensity that made Kale step back. "Seraphiel," the newcomer said, bowing slightly. "The mark has been detected." "This mortal, is he ready for the trials?" Seraphiel's expression remained calm, though his voice carried authority. "He will be ready if he chooses to be, but first he must face himself, and you will bear witness as you always do." Kale's heart pounded. Witness? Trials. He felt like prey, exposed and vulnerable, though Seraphiel's presence still grounded him. He glanced at the Alpha Angel, searching for reassurance, and found only quiet determination. "You will not let me fail, will you?" Kale whispered, almost pleading. Seraphiel's gaze softened. "I will guide you, but you must take the steps yourself. The choice is always yours." The trial began immediately. Kale was led into a chamber bathed in light, yet filled with shadows that seemed to twist and move like living things. The air was heavy with anticipation, and Kale felt the mark on his shoulder throb with energy he could not control. "Focus, Kale," Seraphiel instructed. "The shadows are not your enemies. They are reflections of what you carry inside. Fear, doubt, anger. Each must be acknowledged, each must be faced." Kale stepped forward, heart racing. He felt the shadows swirl around him, whispering fears he had buried for years. Memories of being hunted, shunned, and alone rose like waves threatening to drown him. But Seraphiel's presence anchored him, a light in the darkness, steady and unwavering. "I am not afraid," Kale muttered, though his voice trembled. The shadows intensified, shifting into shapes of those who had tormented him, those he had lost, and even the reflection of himself, twisted by fear and anger. Kale's knees shook, but he took a deep breath. He remembered Seraphiel's words, "Fear is a tool, not a master." Step by step, Kale moved through the shadows, facing each memory, each fear. He acknowledged the pain, the anger, the loneliness, and with each acknowledgement the shadows weakened, losing their hold over him. The mark on his shoulder burned brighter, not with pain but with understanding. "You are stronger than you know," Seraphiel's voice echoed. "And this is only the beginning. But do not mistake strength for certainty. Challenges will come, and your heart will be tested again." Kale's chest heaved, sweat dripping down his face. He had faced the shadows within himself, but the trial was far from over. The chamber shifted, walls dissolving into light and darkness intertwined. Kale felt a presence behind him, not threatening, but intensely aware of his every movement. He turned slowly, heart in his throat, and saw Seraphiel, eyes filled with something more than guidance, something raw and honest, something that made Kale's chest tighten in ways he could not explain. "You did well," Seraphiel said softly. But this trial was only a fraction of what lies ahead. You must grow, Kale, and you must learn to trust even when it terrifies you. Kale's voice was barely a whisper. I don't know if I can. You can, Seraphiel said, taking a small step closer, and I will be here. Always. Kale swallowed, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the chamber's light. He had spent years alone, running from fear, from destiny, from himself. And now, here was someone, an angel, telling him he could face the impossible, and that he would not be alone. The chamber shifted again, walls dissolving into mist, and Kale realized the city outside had changed. Angels moved silently through streets he could not yet see, and the wind carried whispers of warnings, of powers that awaited him. From the mist, a low, resonant hum began to grow, filling the chamber with a vibration that made Kale's teeth chatter. Shadows began to stir again, but this time they moved with intention, as if aware of him, aware of the power within him. Kale, Seraphiel's voice was calm but tense. Something approaches, and it is not here to test you, it is here to take. Kale's heart leapt. The chamber trembled, shadows twisting with urgency. He glanced at Seraphiel, eyes wide. Take who? What? Seraphiel's expression darkened. Enemies of a mortal marked by destiny are relentless, and now one has found you. Kale's stomach churned. He had survived storms, fear, and shadows within himself. But now the world outside threatened him, and he realized the true test had only just begun. The shadows surged forward, moving with speed and intent. Kale gripped the ground, trying to steady himself. The mark burned hotter than ever, a warning and a promise intertwined. Seraphiel's wings unfurled fully, light spilling across the chamber, illuminating the shapes of the approaching danger. Kale felt fear, yes, but also something else, a spark of courage, raw and unyielding. He was no longer running, not entirely. The figure emerged from the mist. Tall, dark, and powerful, it radiated a force that made Kale's blood run cold. Yet Seraphiel stood unwavering, a shield between Kale and the unknown. Kale's chest heaved. What is that? Seraphiel's voice was steady but firm. A test and a threat, and you, Kale, must rise or fall. Your mark is not just a gift, it is a responsibility. The chamber trembled, the shadows twisted. And Kale knew, with an icy certainty, that the next moments would change everything. The chamber trembled under the force of the approaching shadow. Kale's mark glowed brighter than ever, pulsating against his shoulder like a heartbeat, reminding him that the time for running was over. Seraphiel stood in front of him, wings fully unfurled, light spilling around him, shielding Kale from the dark energy that approached. Kale's chest heaved. Fear clawed at him, but beneath it a spark of determination burned. He had survived storms, shadows, and the tests of the city. Now the true trial had arrived, not just to confront the enemy outside, but to confront the power within himself. You are ready, Seraphiel said softly, though the authority in his voice carried across the chamber. Do not doubt yourself. Trust in what you are, Kale. Kale swallowed. I have to. Yes, Seraphiel replied, unwavering, or all will be lost. The shadow surged forward, a living darkness that twisted and writhed, its presence pressing against Kale like a physical weight. It hissed and pulsed with power, drawn toward the mark on his shoulder. Kale felt the mark burn with intensity, a mixture of pain and awakening. He wanted to step back, to hide, to vanish as he had all his life. But Seraphiel's steady gaze met his, unyielding. And for the first time, Kale understood something he had never allowed himself to believe. He could not run. He had to stand, even if fear threatened to consume him. I choose to face it, Kale said, voice trembling but firm. The mark flared, and Kale felt energy surge through him, a force that connected him to the very air, the stone, and the chamber around him. The shadow recoiled, hissing as Kale raised his hands, channeling the power he had long feared. Light and darkness clashed in a storm of energy, spiraling upward toward the ceiling. Seraphiel moved to Kale's side, his own light strengthening, wings extending like shields. Focus, Kale. Let the mark guide you, not control you. Kale clenched his fists, breathing deeply. Memories of every moment of fear, every time he had hidden, every time he had doubted himself, flashed before his eyes. And then, instead of fear, he felt clarity. The mark was not a curse. It was a key, a part of him that gave him strength. He let the energy flow through him, shaping it with willpower and courage. The shadow screamed and twisted, trying to resist, but Kale's resolve was stronger than any fear it could summon. Light erupted from his mark, pure and radiant, burning away the darkness until the shadow could no longer stand. It dissolved into nothingness, leaving only silence in its wake. Kale fell to his knees, chest heaving, exhausted but triumphant. The mark glowed faintly now, warm against his skin, no longer threatening but alive with potential. Seraphiel stepped forward, placing a hand gently on Kale's shoulder. "You have done it," he said, voice filled with quiet pride. "You have faced what most could not even see, and you have emerged stronger." Kale looked up at him, eyes wide, trying to catch his breath. I survived." "Yes," Seraphiel said softly, "and you will survive what comes next because you understand now. Strength comes not from avoiding fear but from facing it, from accepting yourself entirely." For the first time in his life, Kale felt a sense of peace. He was no longer hiding. He was no longer running. The mark was a part of him, yes, but now it was a source of strength, not fear. The city outside the chamber was quiet again, angels watching from the shadows, waiting to see the outcome. But Kale hardly noticed them. His eyes remained fixed on Seraphiel, and he realized something profound. He had not just survived the trial. He had connected with the Alpha Angel in a way that went beyond words, beyond fear. There was trust, understanding, and something even deeper, a bond forged in light and shadow alike. "You were amazing," Seraphiel said quietly, his eyes softening. "I have seen many mortals, but none like you, none who could face themselves and rise." Kale's chest tightened at the words. "I couldn't have done it without you." Seraphiel's wings lowered slightly, his expression unreadable yet tender. "And yet you did it yourself. I only stood beside you. Courage comes from within, Kale, and you have it in abundance." For a long moment the two of them stood in silence, the chamber bathed in the glow of Kale's mark and Seraphiel's light. The storm of fear and shadow had passed, leaving only clarity and strength. But the moment was fleeting. Beyond the chamber, a distant sound echoed, shouts, the clash of steel, and the unmistakable hum of celestial power. Kale's eyes widened. "The world, it's still in danger," Seraphiel nodded, expression grave. "Yes. The city, the realms, they are not yet safe. The forces that sought you will not give up, and now that your power has awakened, they will come faster, stronger." Kale's stomach tightened. The trials had changed him, yes, but the journey was far from over. He had gained strength, but responsibility weighed on him heavier than ever. "You are ready," Seraphiel said, sensing Kale's fear. "But being ready is not enough. You must choose what you will fight for. And you must decide, will you embrace your destiny fully or let it control you?" Kale thought of the years he had spent running, hiding in shadows, fearing the mark he now understood. He thought of the Alpha Angel, whose patience, strength, and guidance had anchored him when he felt he would break, and he realized with a quiet certainty that he could not step back. I choose," Kale said, voice steady. "I choose to face whatever comes. Not just for me, but for everyone who cannot fight, everyone who is afraid, everyone who believes in me." Seraphiel's gaze softened, pride and relief mingling in his expression. "Then we will face it together." Outside, the city trembled as dark forces gathered at its borders. But inside, Kale felt a calm resolve. He was no longer a hunted mortal. He was no longer alone. And he understood for the first time that courage was not the absence of fear, it was the choice to stand despite it. The Alpha Angel extended his hand. Kale reached out, their fingers brushing, and a surge of light connected them, not just as protection but as a bond of trust and partnership. Wings and shadows intertwined, light and mark resonating together. Kale took a deep breath. "What now?" he asked. "Now," Seraphiel said, voice calm but full of power, "we rise, the world awaits, and you have wings even if they are not yet seen. Your mark is your strength and your courage will guide us." Kale nodded. For the first time he did not feel fear. He felt purpose. And he felt a bond that was stronger than any darkness, stronger than any trial. Together, they stepped out of the chamber. Light spilled into the city streets, bathing the angels and Kale in radiance. The dark forces outside roared, but Kale felt steady, grounded by the mark and the presence of the Alpha Angel beside him. "This is only the beginning," Seraphiel said, wings stretching, ready to face whatever came. Kale nodded, heart steady, eyes shining. "Then we face it together." And in that moment the storm of shadow and fear was gone. Kale's mark glowed softly, a beacon of hope, courage, and power. And for the first time, he knew he was not just a mortal running from destiny. He was a force in the world, a being of light, shadow, and choice, ready to embrace whatever came next. Outside the city, the wind carried whispers of warning, but inside, Kale and Seraphiel moved forward together. One step at a time, they would face the darkness. One step at a time, they would bring light. And Kale, once a boy who hid in caves to avoid being marked, now stood as a man who understood that his destiny, his power, and his courage were inseparable, and that the Alpha Angel by his side was no longer a threat, but a guide, a partner, and something more. The world awaited. And Kale was ready. White heavy checkmark word count, tilde 1, 620 words.